Elizabeth Booker calls herself pro-black, fighting for justice, equality, and her community, but there's a twist. She's married to a white man. Critics say her personal life clashes with her public message, sparking heated debates about trust, credibility, and the black intellectual left. From personal tragedy to bold political stances, her story challenges everything we think we know about advocacy and consistency. So, how do you reconcile her words with her life? Let's unpack it. The other day, I came across a profile of a woman named Elizabeth Booker. She's from Houston, Texas, but she was originally born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. Today, she lives and works in Washington, D.C., carving out a career as an attorney. Like many young, educated professionals, she identifies as a liberal black Democrat, and her profile and public commentary make that identity clear. She represents a generation that has not only benefited from higher education and professional advancement but also carries the weight of history and social consciousness into their daily lives. People like Booker often use their platforms to engage in conversations about race, politics, and justice. Conversations that are deeply informed, highly nuanced, and sometimes fiercely opinionated. If you've spent any time around the black intellectual left, you'll recognize her style immediately. She speaks in a way that blends urban cadence with intellectual sharpness, a voice that is both familiar and commanding. There's a rhythm to her speech that draws from African American Vernacular English, AAVE, layered with precise argumentation that signals a deep understanding of political and legal matters. She doesn't shy away from speaking her mind, especially when it comes to critiquing conservatives or expressing her opposition to Donald Trump. Her criticisms are pointed, but they are not random. They are grounded in her observations of how policies and government actions affect black communities and marginalized people more broadly. One example of her engagement with current events came during the protests in Washington, D.C., when residents voiced their opposition to the presence of federal police and the National Guard. Signs and chants filled the streets. "We don't want you here." This was a moment charged with tension, one that sparked heated debates about authority, safety, and the role of federal forces in local communities. Elizabeth Booker weighed in on the situation, offering a perspective that was both practical and deeply personal. People often ask, "Who do you call when you need help?" The police. It's a simple question, but it cuts to the heart of the issue: the limits of law enforcement in truly protecting communities. Booker explained that while people do call the police in times of crisis, the reality is that law enforcement often arrives after the damage is done. The police respond to incidents, they don't necessarily prevent them. To illustrate her point, she shared a personal and tragic story from her own life. In 2017, her brother was shot and killed in Memphis. The police did respond to the scene, as they were called, but tragically, it was too late. He was already dead. The experience underscored a harsh reality. Police presence, no matter how timely, does not guarantee safety. This isn't just a criticism of law enforcement as individuals, it's a commentary on the system itself, which often fails to prevent crime and protect lives, particularly in communities that are already vulnerable. Her story resonated because it's a lived example of the systemic challenges faced by many black families across the country. While policy discussions can sometimes feel abstract, Booker's experience makes the consequences painfully tangible. It's one thing to talk about policing, crime, or community safety in academic terms. It's another to live it, to see firsthand how the structures meant to protect people often fall short. Her perspective blends intellectual analysis with lived experience, creating a voice that is both authoritative and relatable. But her commentary extends beyond personal anecdotes. Booker also addresses broader social and political issues. She's deeply concerned with the ways in which federal policies intersect with the lives of everyday people, especially those in historically marginalized communities. Whether it's federal oversight in cities like D.C., immigration policies, or systemic inequality, she consistently examines how power dynamics play out in real-world scenarios. Her approach reflects a combination of lived experience, legal expertise, and cultural awareness, making her commentary particularly compelling. Moreover, her public voice is part of a larger trend among young, educated black professionals who are navigating both personal success and social responsibility. Many in this group are acutely aware of historical oppression and are committed to using their platforms to advocate for justice, equity, and community empowerment. Booker embodies this dual awareness. She is professionally accomplished, yet she remains deeply connected to the struggles and triumphs of the communities she represents. This duality gives her perspective a weight that is hard to ignore. It's not just opinion. It's grounded in both theory and lived reality. In short, Elizabeth Booker's profile offers more than a snapshot of one person's career or political identity. It provides a window into the ways that personal history, professional achievement, and social consciousness intersect in the lives of Black intellectuals today. Her voice, informed by both tragedy and triumph, challenges audiences to consider not just what policies say, but what they mean in practice. It reminds us that issues like policing, safety, and justice are not abstract. They are deeply human, affecting real families in real communities every day. And through her commentary, we see the value of combining personal narrative with informed critique, creating a platform that educates, challenges, and engages all at once. Back in DC, she was at an event called Black Media Row with another man, and her language was candid and colorful. She joked about leaving if things got chaotic, saying it might turn into a trailer park, and referenced getting up like Representative Al Green, a humorous nod to political theatrics. She also used humor to flip stereotypes. Where some might mock Black communities, she playfully exaggerated stereotypes about white people, poking fun in a way that mirrored the style often applied to Black communities. The tone was strong, funny, and pointed, combining street-smart humor with intellectual critique. You can't ignore the fact that so many attacks on our rights come from the same place: resentment toward Black people and other people of color, not just existing, but thriving in a society built on our oppression. Take birthright citizenship as a clear example of how law, history, and civil rights intersect in the United States. At its core, birthright citizenship is a simple yet powerful principle. Anyone born on U.S. soil automatically becomes a citizen of the United States, regardless of the legal or immigration status of their parents. This concept may seem straightforward today, but it is deeply rooted in the country's complex and often painful history, especially the history of slavery and the struggle for civil rights. The idea of birthright citizenship is inseparable from the history of Black people in America. Before the Civil War, the legal and social system treated Black people not as citizens, but as property. A stark example of this is the infamous Supreme Court case Dred Scott v. Sanford in 1857. In that ruling, the court declared that no person of African descent, whether enslaved or free, could ever be considered a citizen of the United States. Essentially, Black people were legally stripped of their humanity. They were denied the most fundamental rights and protections simply because of their race. This ruling entrenched the notion that Black lives were secondary under the law, reflecting the broader societal acceptance of slavery and systemic oppression at the time. It wasn't until the conclusion of the Civil War and the ratification of the 14th Amendment in 1868 that this injustice was legally addressed. The 14th Amendment explicitly granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, effectively overturning the Dred Scott decision. For the first time in U.S. history, Black Americans were formally recognized as citizens, with the legal rights and protections that citizenship entails. This was a monumental step in the fight for equality and justice, laying the foundation for civil rights progress in the decades to come. However, the principle of birthright citizenship didn't stop there. It would take further legal clarification to establish its full scope. In 1898, the Supreme Court addressed the case of United States versus Wong Kim Ark. Wong Kim Ark was born in San Francisco to Chinese immigrant parents who were not U.S. citizens. When he tried to return to the United States after traveling abroad, he was denied entry on the basis that he was not a citizen. The court ruled in his favor, confirming that the 14th Amendment's guarantee of citizenship applies to virtually anyone born on U.S. soil, including children of immigrants. This landmark case firmly established that birthright citizenship extends beyond the descendants of enslaved Black people to include all children born in the United States, regardless of their parents' nationality. These legal milestones show that birthright citizenship is far from a modern invention or a matter of political convenience. It is the product of centuries of struggle, legal battles, and societal shifts aimed at recognizing the inherent rights of people who had previously been denied them. It is also a principle that embodies a commitment to equality and fairness. Being born in a country should automatically grant the protections, responsibilities, and benefits of citizenship. This principle is particularly meaningful in a nation built on immigration and diversity, where generations of families have sought the promise of opportunity, safety, and belonging. Yet, despite its legal clarity and historical significance, birthright citizenship remains a politically charged topic. In recent years, certain political figures, including former President Donald Trump, have publicly questioned or attempted to challenge the principle, especially regarding children born to undocumented immigrants. These challenges ignore the centuries of legal precedent that uphold birthright citizenship as constitutional. Both the 14th Amendment and the Wong Kim-ark decision make it clear that any attempt to revoke or restrict citizenship based solely on the circumstances of a child's birth runs contrary to established law. It is not merely a political opinion, it is unconstitutional. Understanding birthright citizenship in this context also requires recognizing its connection to broader struggles for justice and equality. It is not just a legal technicality, it is a response to centuries of exclusion and marginalization. The rights it guarantees were hard-won, first for Black Americans emerging from slavery and later for immigrant communities seeking recognition and security. It represents a promise that being born in the United States confers belonging and protection under the law, regardless of race, ancestry, or the social status of one's parents. Moreover, the debates surrounding birthright citizenship often reveal deeper societal tensions about race, immigration, and power. Questions about who deserves citizenship are often rooted not in law or principle but in prejudice, fear, or resentment toward marginalized communities. Critics of birthright citizenship sometimes frame it as a political or economic issue, but at its heart, it is a question of human rights and historical justice. The principle exists to ensure that no group of people, whether Black Americans or the children of immigrants, can be legally excluded from the rights and responsibilities that come with being a citizen. In short, birthright citizenship is more than a legal rule. It is a cornerstone of American democracy and equality. From the horrors of slavery and the injustice of Dred Scott to the transformative 14th Amendment and the landmark Wong Kim-ark decision, it reflects the country's ongoing struggle to live up to its ideals. Any attempt to undermine or challenge this principle today is not just a political maneuver, it is an attack on centuries of hard-won rights and a fundamental misunderstanding of the law. Birthright citizenship reminds us that being born in a country should confer belonging, protection, and recognition. It ties us to a history of struggle and triumph and serves as a testament to the enduring fight for equality in America. It is a principle that cannot be lightly dismissed, and understanding its history is essential to understanding both the legal and social fabric of this nation. Here's where it gets interesting. Elizabeth Booker ties the Black struggle to immigrant rights. She's framing birthright citizenship as part of a broader fight for justice, connecting Black and immigrant communities. This coalition approach mirrors conversations in progressive circles, where rights for Black people, immigrants, and other marginalized groups, sometimes including LGBTQ+ communities, are discussed together. On a more personal note, she shared on the Revolt podcast that she has a unique approach to her work as a lawyer. She'll overcharge white clients while giving discounts, or even working for free, for Black organizations or clients who can't afford full rates. It's her way of redistributing resources and supporting her community. Interestingly, her personal life adds another layer. She's married to a very white man. This juxtaposition highlights the complexity of her perspective, someone deeply committed to Black advocacy while navigating a diverse, personal context. Among the Black left, it's common to speak passionately about Black issues, and Booker's story shows how these discussions can expand into broader social and political connections. Elizabeth Booker's work and social commentary focus heavily on issues like reparations, racism, and white supremacy. She often speaks in African American Vernacular English, AAVE, expressing strong pro-Black views and critiquing systemic inequality. On her public platforms, everything signals her dedication to the Black community. But then there's a personal twist. She's married to a white man. Here's where some tensions appear. On one hand, she talks about overcharging white clients and mocking white people, positioning herself as a defender of Black interests. On the other hand, in her personal life, she's in an interracial relationship. Now, to be clear, there's nothing inherently wrong with interracial relationships, and for people outside the pro-Black or Pan-African community, it's a private matter. But when someone publicly identifies as pro-Black or Pan-African, builds an intellectual framework around anti-white supremacy, and actively criticizes whites while benefiting Black communities, yet is in a relationship with a white partner, it raises questions of consistency and trust within those movements. From the perspective of the Black left, this can be problematic. Her rhetoric and her personal choices appear at odds. Some members of extreme pro-Black spaces might feel her arguments don't align with her life, creating distrust. We can't rely on your framework, it doesn't match your actions. At the same time, white audiences might also see a contradiction. How can someone claim to overcharge or critique white people, but then be married to one? Her approach of connecting the Black struggle to broader struggles, immigrant rights, other marginalized communities, further blurs the line, making it hard for either group to see full loyalty. She's positioned in a space where neither side can fully trust her, because her personal choices and public messaging seem to pull in different directions. This highlights a growing trend. 20 or 30 years ago, someone presenting this combination of intellectual positions and personal life would have struggled to be taken seriously in pro-Black circles. Today, the landscape has shifted, but the tension between ideology and personal life remains a complicated balancing act. The issue here is consistency between words and actions. Elizabeth Booker talks in a framework deeply rooted in Black advocacy, racism, white supremacy, reparations, but her personal choices seem to clash with that framework. Coming from Memphis, a city with a strong Black identity, some argue she should align more closely with her community, yet she chooses a different path in her personal life. Compare her to someone like Dr. Umar Johnson. Despite his controversies, he maintains credibility in certain circles because his personal life aligns with his public message. He speaks passionately about building the Black community, Black families, and addressing white supremacy, and he doesn't deviate in ways that would undermine that. That alignment between message and action matters. In contrast, Booker selectively borrows ideas from pro-Black frameworks while living a lifestyle that seems to contradict them. That disconnect, critics argue, makes her appear unreliable, neither fully supportive of her community nor consistent enough to gain trust elsewhere. In some circles, that's seen as a form of hypocrisy. Some commentators, like Brandon Tatum or Candace Owens, are straightforward about their stance. They don't hide their opposition to Black communities, and their personal choices reflect that. Booker, however, occupies a murkier space. Her public messaging may appear pro-Black, but critics claim her actions, like advocating for immigrant rights in ways that may compete with Black interests, undermine that stance. Some see this as pushing policies, such as birthright citizenship for immigrants, that could dilute resources or attention from Black communities. Essentially, her critics argue that she presents a pro-Black front while simultaneously making choices that contradict or complicate that message. The result is a figure who inspires debate but struggles to maintain trust, both within her own community and with those she critiques. The main tension, according to critics, arises from what they see as a disconnect between public advocacy and private life. On one hand, some individuals present themselves as strong proponents of pro-Black ideals, speaking passionately about racial justice, Black empowerment, and systemic inequality. Of course, it's important to note that these debates are complex and highly subjective. Relationships and personal choices are nuanced and deeply personal, and critics themselves acknowledge that not all questions of alignment are black and white. Yet in public discourse, perception matters. When leaders or influencers live in ways that appear contradictory to their stated values, it sparks broader conversations about authenticity, credibility, and the expectations placed on those who speak for their communities. At the end of the day, these tensions invite us to reflect on the challenges of navigating identity, advocacy, and personal freedom in highly visible spaces. They remind us that leadership and influence are as much about consistency and trust as they are about knowledge or eloquence. How individuals reconcile personal choices with public messaging will always be a topic of debate, particularly in communities where solidarity and collective advancement are deeply valued. So, what do you think? Are these criticisms fair, or do they reflect unrealistic expectations placed on public figures? As always, this is your boy OD Jackson, back with another episode of Celebrity Junk with your Farbell. We've unpacked the issues, weighed the critiques, and explored the tensions. Now it's your turn to reflect, discuss, and form your own opinions. We're out.